Good morning, Commissioner Eskridge.
Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioner Foster.
Good morning.
Commissioner Foster, can you try that again? I'm not sure that I heard you, and I want to make sure your audio works.
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can, thank you. I appreciate that.
Thanks for checking.
Yep.
Okay, good morning, everybody. I'll call the meeting of March 31st, 2022 to order. We have a quorum. Welcome to all of our guests. Amanda, are you going to do the virtual meeting guidance?
I am. All right. Well, good morning, commissioners, members of the public and staff. To ensure our meeting goes smoothly today, just a few decorum rules. First, please ensure your mic is muted unless you're speaking. Also, please state your name before speaking. And in general, please have your cameras on if possible when you're speaking. And of course, if you're having technological challenges, you are free to turn your cameras off. The public chat today is actually enabled for some activities we have in the study session. So just as a reminder, those conversations in the chat are subject to open records. Also, the meeting is being recorded and streamed live on YouTube. So those are the few rules for today, decorum rules. Thank you. And as Janelle would say, let's have a great meeting.
Okay, thank you, Amanda. Do we have any announcements, Michael?
President Hubble, no announcements this morning.
Okay, then we'll move on to appearances by the public. Is there anybody from the public that wishes to, excuse me, speak on anything? Okay, I don't check participants here. I don't see anything. Okay, so we'll move on to the consent calendar where we have the cash statement operating fund, the approval of the minutes from the last meeting, which is 17th of March. A few sewer extension plans, and then review of bids and award a contract for annual boiler preventive maintenance services. Any questions on any of those items before we get a motion? Okay, I don't see anyone with any questions. So do we have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
Happy to make that motion. It's Commissioner Meyer.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Meyer, second by?
It's Wilson, I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Meyer, second by Commissioner Wilson to approve the consent calendar. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And any opposed? Okay, motion carries. That will take us to the Chief Engineer and Director report. Alan, you're going to do the operations report?
I am. Just way earlier than I'm used to seeing, so I'll find my screen share button. Are you seeing that okay?
Yep,
Yes.
it's up.
Yeah. I think it's sharing a different screen, but that's okay. Okay. Good morning, Commission. Alan Grooms, Operations Manager. I'll be doing the monthly report on the plant performance. Moving through for the February plant performance, this is looking back. Normal metrics, we've got pretty normal performance. We've kind of, I don't want to sound like use an old term broken record, but we're pretty much running kind of very similar performance to what we've been seeing recently with, within the bounds of the historical normals and well within permit numbers, 3.6 on CBOD 5, suspended solids at 4.3, ammonia, all of those are pretty low. Phosphorus at 0.3, well within the normal bounds of performance that we see here. 0.23 is pretty good. We don't use any chemical, as many of you or most of you probably know. This is all biological. So it's actually really good performance for a biological phosphorus system with no chemical addition. So our exception here on our performance here would be on the chloride metric. Again, that's a dilution factor, and also, we are getting some of that melt coming off in February. So, that also really has a outsized impact. Just whatever seeps into our system. We haven't really seen the spike this year that we maybe have in past years, and that may be because it's been so dry and maybe the ground is absorbing a lot of that. But that is a factor we watch this time of year. This is probably the riskiest part of the year for us to have a chloride violation, and there's really nothing we can do about it. And with the lack of dilution right now, we're probably a little bit more vulnerable than typical years. So, any questions on the performance metrics? Okay, I'll move on to resource recovery. The first of those slides is the clean water. We're up to 2 billion gallons put out back to the environment this year, and as of the end of February. Biogas is also tracking right down where we would expect it to be. The reused effluent is also our chlorinated effluent that we use in our W4 system through the plant. So, and those are pretty stable values. The reused effluent is the clean water obviously is related to how much we're getting. So, and any questions on this slide? Okay, hearing none. Looking at the resource recovery slide, we've got update on biosolid storage. As of the end of February, we're about 45% full tankage. So right now we're about 50% full right now. The update this morning from the Metrogo crew is that they're thinking they may start hauling out mid-April. So that's about an average time for us. So we're in really good shape. We're projecting storage well into June. So we're in really good shape as far as biosolid storage. Metrogo cake, we are continuing to make some of that cake product for experimentation later in the year on that with exploring markets. I shouldn't call it experimentation so much as exploration. A little bit of difference there in that terminology. Our struvite recovery, about just short of 55 tons exported since the end of February. And our Metrogo, what we've sent to the tanks is a little bit down because we are making cake. So that kind of offsets that. So any questions on this slide? Okay. And last, we had an question a couple of months ago, just kind of wanting, as we're starting to roll into UV disinfection season, just wanting a little bit of an update on how we're doing with that. So we're right in the midst right now of finalizing our preps for starting up the UV system. That system will be started up on April 15th. So just really a couple weeks away. Just some quick updates. We've only got 1 year under our belt. So, but so far I was looking back at the system. It was a little bit surprising to me. The performance is actually pretty comparable to the old system. And I was really surprised in a way by that because I was expecting to really blow away the old system. But we have to keep in mind that this system is a smarter system. So where the old system, it's like we were doing well with what we had. This system is making adjustments to really kind of target that level. So we're seeing a little bit better performance, but it isn't blowing the old system away. We could if we dialed it up to do that, but that's that would be expending more power, burning more lamp life. So, but what I do see in the data is that we've got less variation in the fecal numbers that we put out. So it's a tighter grouping. So it's a more consistent performance, and that's, I think, because it's responding to those inputs, how much flow is coming through, and how turbid the water is. Overall power demand is lower, but it is, part of that is it's flow related, and there becomes a certain point where you can't turn it down any farther. So you get to a point where you're not going to save any more on power, even if unless you could stop the flow and keep it off. And we do occasionally have the pumps stop, especially like around 6 a.m. But because it's a short duration, we actually leave the lamps on because it's harder on the system to turn them on and off. Electronics, a lot of times it's cycling the power is not recommended because the problems occur at the startup and shutdown. So we'll leave those on. So but off the cuff, it does look like we were running a little bit lower power, and that was expected. Maintenance so far, we've got fewer lamps, so that's a good thing. Overall, the initial assessments were it's pretty good on maintenance, but there is some added complexity. This has got an automatic wiping system in there, so those kind of things have to. They're new systems that we're not used to, so and they are more complicated, so they've got more parts and things like that. So, in some respects, we may see in certain areas more maintenance required during the season to take care of those wipers and things. And then a question had been brought forward about extension of the season, what impacts that would have on us. And really what we've got is, we do most of our maintenance on the system when the system's down in the wintertime. So we're going from basically mid-October to mid-April as our off season presently. When that new season comes in, it'll be a 3-month off season. So we lose some of that off time to do the maintenance. So our window gets shorter to do that. I'd say the biggest impact is probably on our clarifier cleaning. We clean those off to clear off the algae before the season starts and at the end of the season. That's going to push that into more adverse weather. As we get into, we're going to be doing that cleaning in February and December. So that's going to be, we're going to have to make some adjustments to accommodate that. That may be just going slower. That may be better weather gear for the crews. That may be picking different days. And then I am anticipating this isn't something that we've really this is my opinion. I think we may see more issues with algae accumulation in season. We do a algae control where we take that down to keep it under control, so we don't have to use chemicals to control the algae that grows in the clarifier weirs during the season. But with a longer season and that cleaning being on the outside edges of the season, you've got a larger window. You got to keep it unfouled. So, and when towards the end of the season, we see our numbers start to degrade because those clumps of algae come off, they come downstream and they tend to foul the bulbs, and so then that can result in alarms and failures. So failures being that we've got to go out, respond to it, clear it, get it restored. So I would anticipate seeing more of that when the season extends. So that's maybe more than you really wanted to know about that topic, but that's what I have on that. So any questions on the UV system?
Anybody have any questions? I did, Alan. For 2 questions. One, does the new regs take effect in terms of the shortened off season? And then how long does it typically take for the clarifiers to clean? Are we talking a week? Or are we talking like a month? And because fitting it in, you might find, a week of good, decent weather to do it, but you may not find a couple weeks in a row.
Yeah, the new season is scheduled to start next year, Commissioner Hovell. So it will be, I have to double check. I don't want to confirm it to be 100% sure, but I believe it's March 1st, 2023. We will start disinfection. So by this time next year, if I'm remembering it correctly, we'll be a month into our UV disinfection season. As far as the clarifier cleaning window, we're in the process of doing that right now. In fact, they're out cleaning right now. I can look out and I can see them actually working on it in the snow. That's actually, with the crews and the equipment that we have, we can do basically 2 a day. And so with 19 clarifiers, it takes us about 2.5 weeks to get through those. That's assuming we don't have any break-in works, people get sick, things like that, where it's like you have to stretch it out. So we're typically looking at about a 2.5 to 3 week window that we look at to get those done. So, and they want to build in a little bit of fudge, so they've got some wiggle room. If something happens, it's unexpected, they've got time to get it done. So.
Okay, thank you, Alan. Anybody else have any questions? Okay. Seeing none, that moves us to the future meeting schedule. But before I go to that, Michael, did you have anything you wanted to add under the Chief Engineer and Director report?
Commissioner Hovell, no, I don't.
Okay. So we'll move on to the topics, our study session, the Commission Policy Book Review. Okay, Michael, you're going to lead it off?
I will. I'll share my screen. Okay. Welcome, commissioners, member of the public. This is the Commission's first study session. for this year. And just for members of the public, the commission changed their meeting format last year and is integrating 4 commission study sessions a year, which are longer meetings and where the commission works in kind of a committee of the whole format. There are no decisions being made other than the consent calendar, but they review important issues of policy throughout the year. And so we're really excited. I know as staff, we've been really anticipating this new format and are excited to get to work on it. A 2022 goal in the budget was to identify and prioritize policy initiatives. And reviewing policies is something boards should do regularly. It is a good business practice. Your policies were last reviewed in 2017 when they were established. And, since that time, those of you who went through that process of integrating the old policies that the district had into the new policies and creating new policies, were fairly new on the job in 2016 and 2017. And now, as we look at them again, you have many more years of experience to draw upon to take a critical eye and look at these policies. And we've also been joined by some newer commissioners who bring a fresh perspective to this process. So the timing's really good to do this. The study sessions are designed to build upon each other. And today is really level setting or context setting to get everyone on the same page of where we have come from, where we are. And then with the progression of each study session, the commission will be going into more and more detail with their policy work to set those policies so they're working for you and you're updating them, you're refining them and adjusting them. I also want to introduce Amanda Wagner and Bill Walker, who are joining me in co-facilitation and co-presenting today. And so the 3 of us will be tag teaming on this presentation. Our study session objectives are started from what we heard from the commission last April, when the commission identified a challenge of linking our high-level policies, our goals, and management priorities. And that's why one of the reasons why this 2022 goal was established. Our team at the staff level, immediately went to work on trying to sort this out. We realized we were carrying legacy pieces that were in some ways obsolete in terms of our strategic pillars and other things, and wasn't serving the district moving forward, and clearly wasn't supporting commission policies. We will start with where we have come from and how we have changed. That's what's with the formation, and how we have changed is really important because this context is critical for the commission as we look to the future. And then Amanda and Bill will then share the work of staff who has been working on this through a staff team and engaging multiple staff on how do we change our internal processes to support commission priorities. We will then take a short break and then we'll reconvene and provide an overview of the commission's policies and how they work together. And since we are in a transition year, it's important to note that we will also carve out space at the May study session for goal setting, which is in keeping with the commission policies of having goals established in the second quarter of the year in preparation for next year, the 2023 budget process. We have some meeting agreements that were adopted by the commission as a way for the commission to work together and find common ground, and taking individual interests into consideration and finding common interests. And I just want to pause here just for a minute for you to read through these. I'm not going to read them out loud. So what we're going to do is utilize these agreements and we have designed processes to allow commissioners to share their interests with each other, and to allow times for reflection and thinking before we move into discussions. And another thing that wasn't listed in these commission meeting agreements, but the commission has given me permission to facilitate these meetings as we progress forward, in which I'm going to be fulfilling that role today. So let's start at the beginning. And in 1930, for us to be a successful team, both as a commission and staff, it's really helpful to be grounded in who we are and why we exist. When you look back as to why the district was formed in the first place, it reminds us of things we take for granted today, which did not exist 80 years ago. It is centering in a way to remind ourselves of some of those foundation principles. The district was formed in 1930 by a judge who received weeks of testimony at the time. And that judge made a bold decision to create a regional sewerage district. His decision is contained in the report that's on this screen here. And here is what he said. And I'd like if there's a commissioner that would like to volunteer to read this out loud.
I'll do it. Okay, okay, the question of necessity of having burdens placed upon taxpayers within the district was argued with considerable force. That may be said that there is no present necessity for the organization of such a district. Nevertheless, in considering all the merits of the proposition and the matters of public health, safety, comfort, convenience, and welfare, we must look to expected results in the future. If we do not seek to provide these expected benefits in the future, nearly all projects would seem unnecessary and burdensome. It will not do to wait until an epidemic is in our midst and then take means of prevention. It would not be considered wise to have the many natural benefits of the community despoiled by pollution and unsanitary conditions, and then seek to remedy them after the injury is done. Judge George Kroenke, 3 February 1930.
I'd like for commissioners to reflect on this, what President Hubble just read, and on your notepads, just jot down some words, phrases, or themes that really speak to you. Let's take a minute or two to do that. Okay. I'd like another volunteer to read the next passage here. Another member of the commission.
I can do it.
Thank you, Commissioner Meyer.
Another quote from Judge Cronky: "The preservation of public health, safety, comfort, convenience, and welfare of the community within its boundaries as a basis for the creation of the district." And then the statutes say to promote the public health and welfare and affect efficiency and economy in sewerage management.
Thank you, Commissioner Meyer. Again, let's take a moment to reflect on these founding principles and capture the words and themes that speak to you here. Thank you. This is one of my favorite photographs of the district when it was Nine Springs was being built in the 20s. And you can see all the farmland that is now most of our treatment plant today. And you can see how small it was when it started and how we've progressed through the years. So you've done this piece, and now what I'd like you to do is share in the chat what words, phrases, or themes speak to you. Since I'm in presentation mode, I won't be able to see the chat, so Amanda, I'm wondering if you'd be willing to read them out loud as they start populating.
Yes, I'm happy to do that. Commissioner Wilson said public health, safety, and welfare. Commissioner Eskridge. Expected benefits, quote, expected benefits in the future. Commissioner Hubble said not wait for the epidemic, or for epidemic. Themes from Commissioner Eskridge: innovation, forward thinking. Commissioner Wilson: efficiency and economy. Commissioner Meyer echoed public health, safety, welfare, community, and efficiency, economy. Commissioner Booklet echoed what Commissioner Meyer said. Commissioner Foster: future, necessity, burden, epidemic, prevention versus remedy, despoiled by pollution, and unsanitary, efficiency and economy of management. Commissioner Clark: good decision versus having 10 small treatment plants in the area, probably unprecedented at the time. Again, from Commissioner Wilson: provide benefits to the future. Commissioner Meyer: the proactive, future-looking aspect struck me. Commissioner Hubble: not wait for the natural habitat to be despoiled. And Commissioner Bookland: not wait until epidemic and then take means of prevention. I believe I grabbed them all from the
Thank you,
chat.
Amanda. Thank you, Amanda. And thank you, commissioners, for those reflections. Now we have a poll question. On a scale of 1 to 10, how is the district doing at meeting these founding principles? What 10 being doing an outstanding job, 1 doing a poor job. And so now we'll go to a poll.
And hopefully the poll is up on your screen.
It is up, Amanda.
All right, Michael, I have shared the results.
Can you reiterate the results? I do not see them, but I'm sure the other commissioners are seeing them.
Sure, so we had 3 votes for 10. The district is doing an excellent job. 3 votes for 9 and 1 at an 8.
Thank you. Those are good numbers. And the delta between where we are and where we need to go is as I look at the spread here, is a small delta. And yet as a district, if we want to continue to advance and make changes, getting everyone from let's say an 8 or a 9 to a 10 is a lot more challenging than getting from a 6 to a 10. And so that's what we're going to now ask the commissioners to do. Let me see here. Get to the next slide. So we're going into our first breakout, and before I turn it over to Amanda to give instructions, we're going to break out into groups of 2 or 3 today, and ask you what would make it a 10 for you, and if you're at a 10, maybe what would make it an 11 or 12, and then what I'd like to do is, as you listen to your group mates, one group will be 3, there'll be 2 groups of 2. I'd like you to really listen to what you're hearing from your group mates, and then we're going to reconvene into the full session in 5 minutes. And I'd like for commissioners to paraphrase what they heard from others in their group. And really paraphrasing is just restating or formulating what your partner's ideas are in your own words, without adding any new ideas on it. And so it's just about reflecting feelings, thoughts, and statements. And we are also asking the public who have joined this meeting, such as Greg, you can select any group you want to join as we move forward. And maybe I'll pause there for a second, Amanda, to see if you have any other instructions before we move into breakout.
Sure. Yeah, so momentarily, you should have a breakout room icon on the in the tray of the Zoom call. And so commissioners, there will be rooms assigned with your last name. So you are to go join those rooms, and then members of the public are welcome to join any room they would like.
Okay, let's proceed with our breakouts.
We're still waiting, right? It's Wilson.
Nope, you can go.
Well,
do you not see it?
We're not getting prompted yet, Amanda.
Oh,
I'm not getting prompted anyway.
Yeah, me neither.
You need to click on the breakout room button at the bottom, and then a window will appear with options.
Thank you. I see it now.
thank you, Bill.
Looks like commissioners are coming back into full session. Let's scan down below. Excellent, excellent. Thank you.
Hey, I got flipped around in my breakout room like I was a drunken sailor or something. It was awesome.
Uh-oh.
1 minute I'm talking to Tom and Sarah, and the next minute I'm in the middle of a conversation with Grant.
Sorry, Commissioner Wilson, I noticed you didn't make it to the right room, so I moved you.
I made it to the room that said my name, but that's okay. Thank you for moving me. It was
You're
it
welcome.
was a very pleasant conversation.
Excellent.
Well, here, this is great, and we can improvise here a little bit. Well, maybe not improvise, but you'll have a chance to share with the full group of what you heard from others. And I'd like for you all to imagine that you all traveled to the district today through the snow. And if we would have had an in-person meeting, we'd be sitting around our horseshoe. And I'd like for you to share. We're going to go around the horseshoe, starting with Commissioner Eskridge, and just share and paraphrase what you heard from your fellow commissioners. And then we'll go to the next commissioner, who is Commissioner Wilson, and then Meyer, etc., until we get onto the other end, which is Commissioner Clark. So, Commissioner Eskridge, would you like to lead us off?
Sure. So Tom Havel and I, and for a moment, Tom Wilson, had a great conversation with Kathy. And we really talked about, in general, from my perspective, the district meeting the original intentions and themes around especially innovation and public health and safety and protecting the environment, but the ongoing challenge being one of economics of scale, fiscal responsibility, just the cost of infrastructure, and that's going to continue to be a challenge, particularly in this near term we're expecting moving forward.
Does that mean you want me to go, Michael?
Yes.
Okay. Well, what I heard from Grant and others that were in our breakout session were to make us more than a 10, I think, go above and beyond DNR rules and regulations as we move forward with that. More energy reuse as we can do that, and consider even more efficiencies and economies of scale when we're doing things. And Grant can say the one thing that I added because I agreed with all of those. I think that those are all very important. So that's what I got, what was discussed in ours.
All right, in my group, which was Beth and Ken and myself, we settled on a group composite score of 9 with an upward trending direction going forward if we keep it up. And we thought that the efficiency, economy of scale, ideas baked into the original purpose of the district are things we do quite well. We have room to continue to do even better on getting all of our customer and owner communities on board with this cost component that Sarah talked about, that's always growing around infrastructure, and being sure that just everyone's on board with that side of the balance of all the good that comes of what we do, but it comes at a cost, which Judge Cronky talked about. Also, there's room for us to continue to lead. I think this echoes something I think Tom said from his group, but the room for us to continue to lead on climate change, sustainability in a broad way going forward, and just continuing to excel in that direction, which I think, like Tom said, goes above and beyond baseline regulatory requirements, but more like planetary needs, community needs, certainly, but even larger than just the community we serve.
Commissioner Hubble.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Well, as Sarah mentioned, I was in her group with Kathy, and I think the thing that we recognize, the district has embraced innovation, and we've embraced our mission, and we are successful in meeting that mission. And that includes, I think that whole idea of innovation speaks well to what others have said, Ezra just said, and what Tom had indicated, that we tend to go beyond the regulations. And you could see that with the, even though it's a regulation now, we were so successful that the DNR put on an additional regulation of water for us. But I think that's the main thing. That the challenges are going to be the economy with the wise spending of dollars, given the increasing infrastructure costs and the improvements that we have to make within the district, and how we can do that to the best of our abilities and produce that efficient economic district as laid out in the statute.
Commissioner Foster.
Yeah, I think Tom mentioned most of what we talked about, and then his add-on was, I think, consistent with what we heard from Ezra around on the cost front. Make sure we have buy-in from local communities around our service charges, and making sure that they're on board with kind of that efficiency and economy aspect of it.
Thank you. Commissioner Bookland.
I think Ezra captured our discussion really well. We're looking, we gave it a 9+, and I think opportunities to become an innovation leader would get us up to a 10. Looking for cost efficiencies, increasing our ability to do that, and then community buy-in. So those three are the things that we really discussed.
Commissioner Clark.
Yes, Michael, I would echo everyone's comments so far. I think the district has done a good job, a much better job as of the last 5 years communicating with the member communities. And to get my 9 up to a 10, I would ask that we continue to do that, because that's very important with a large capital improvement plan so that we have for the next few years.
Thank you, Commissioner Clark. Before I turn it over to Amanda Wegner, as we phase into the next part of this study session, I wanted to stop here to see if there are additional reflections and thoughts that the commissioners would like to share.
I would, I guess, just add one thing that sort of stands out to me when we think about the back in the day when it was created. I think primarily focused around managing human waste, and how now when we look at some of the bigger challenges we have around pollutants, and I think a much more expanded role of sort of water management that includes a lot of other things like that's used on roadways. That's now part of our scope of how we deal, or with water softeners or PFAS, that these are things that probably weren't really anticipated back when it was created, when it was really about how do we manage, I think primarily, human waste.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Foster. Are there other comments?
One quick thought that strikes me is I noted that the judge said it was sort of an inward focus. It was protect the community within the boundaries from the problems that might ensue if we weren't taking care of the waste. And I think this kind of dovetails with what Grant just said, but we've of necessity, and I think following the realities that have played out over 8 decades, we've shifted to a bigger, broader focus that's outside of it's. Of course, initial and primary focus is within the community, but it goes beyond too. We're doing things to protect the Gulf of Mexico from too much nutrients. We're doing things to protect the river that flows away from the community and downstream from having too much chloride in it and lots of other things in it. And so I think that's an interesting evolution that's worth maybe noting.
I will add in the 2019 Commission strategic planning, one of the ideals, the 3 ideals commissioners identified was one of the opportunities is to look beyond our boundaries and look for opportunities and not just look at our service area and work in there. So that's really much in line with what the commission identified in 2019. Are there what other thoughts do you have?
I just like to echo that that we're part of a larger global community, and our product, our effluent goes into the broader streams. And so I think that's really important to look at that. And I also like to look at that along with climate change, because climate change is a big deal and we play a part in that. So what is our part of that going into the future, not only just today, but in the decades to come?
Thank you, Commissioner Bookland. Commissioner Clark.
Michael, I'd just like to say the 9.2 to 9.3 score to me is a nice compliment to yourself and all the employees at the district. I think you do a very good job. I probably don't tell you that enough as a commissioner, but I think that score right there is a nice compliment to everyone that's associated with the district.
Thank you, Commissioner. Let's pause one more minute to see what other comments commissioners have. We are, one of the things with being on video and everything, we are capturing all these ideas. And we will be able to utilize these as we move to the next study sessions. This has been very valuable discussion today, and so it will not be lost. We'll continue to go back to these ideas that you've brought up today and these themes. Thank you. So now I'm going to turn it over to Amanda Wagner, who's been a part of leading a team. As we look at the district and the changes we need to make, we also had to look internal, and she'll be sharing with you the work that's been going on and where we are. So I'm going to move my screen forward here, and our strategic plan journey. So you tell me when you'd like me to advance the slide. I'll keep it here until you'd like me to advance the slide.
Will do. Thank you very much. So thank you, Michael, and good morning, commissioners. Bill Walker and I will be presenting on the work that we've been doing over the last 10, 11 months on the strategic plan. So our strategy and strategy execution. So I have the privilege of introducing you to the strategy piece and how strategy addresses some of the interests the commission had identified last year, and that includes creating a sense of priority and managing workload in a way that it acknowledges and accounts for core work. I also get to share with you how we have evolved our approach and why this evolution has been important. And to do that, first, I want to set the scene. So I want to take you back a little bit in time to sunnier days for sure. But it's Monday, May 17th, 2021. It's about 11:30 in the morning and I'm sitting at my kitchen table. And I can still picture the scene. So it's not my usual place of work, but I needed the space because I had my work laptop, my personal laptop. I had a textbook with about a 2-inch binding kind of sitting over here. And then I had some loose sheets kind of spread across the table. And I have all this stuff because I'm agonizing over an email that I'm trying to write. And specifically, it's an email in response to Michael that he had sent that weekend about our former strategic plan, or as we call it, strategic pillars. It's about the third or fourth such email on the topic, and it's specifically about how to update and realign the plan to address the interests, as I mentioned, of the commission, as I mentioned earlier. But the thing is, I'm really stuck because I know that we're not using the right approach, and I'm just trying to get straight the reasons why. And at this point, I've spent about 3 hours on this email. So why the pillars, to me, were not the right approach wasn't just like a hunch or preference. By way of background, in January of last year, I started working toward my MBA. And in last May, I was only 3 courses in, but the stars were aligning and work and school were really intersecting. And the textbook that I mentioned that was sitting on my table was open to a chapter on strategic planning. I had just dove into the week earlier. And over on my personal laptop, I had pulled up an article by Harvard business professor Michael Porter, who's a leader on economic and business strategy. And kind of right in the middle of the screen was one of Porter's more quintessential quotes, which is, "The essence of strategy is choosing what not to do." So if you recall, our strategic pillars document was really a laundry list of nearly 30 things that we were currently doing, things we should do, things we could do. It also included like guiding principles and things we can't control, as well as vague concerns and future-looking items that could really fundamentally change the shape of the district. The strategic pillars didn't really have, it really lacked the assignment of responsibility in a clear, definite manner. There were names associated, staff names associated to each one, but that wasn't very clear on what was actually being done. There was really no way to demonstrate progress or to diagnose like issues that might have been bubbling under the surface with all of the items on the strategic pillars. And most importantly, there was really no means to prioritize or allocate resources. And so counter to that Porter quote I gave you just a moment ago, the pillars really made everything look like a priority with really no meaningful structure for execution. So as you can see, where I was getting stuck is the pillars didn't really address the commission's interests in prioritization and workload management. So that morning, I spent another hour or two diving in and really thinking about my previous experiences. I worked on strategic planning in a couple different organizations, and just started looking at other organizations' plans too. And ultimately, I came to the conclusion that we should scrap the pillars and go back to the drawing board to write a good strategy that fit the district as a business that creates value for our owners, our owner communities. Of course, I wanted to validate my thinking first, so I called Bill and shared my idea and the logic behind it, and he was immediately on board. And then we proposed this to Michael, and he jumped on as well, seeing that this was the right approach to his concerns and the commission's interests. So pretty quickly, we formed the strategic planning sub-team, which includes myself, Bill, Seth McClure, who is our strategic performance and policy advisor here at the district. And we started meeting, and we were very intentional in our approach. So we looked at strategic plans from other government entities. We really dug into the strategy literature, including Porter, who I mentioned earlier, Rommel Kramer, just a couple other names. And it really seemed like every other week that my coursework was aligning with our planning work, and we had a new article or resource, a way of thinking to consider. We also looked at industry leaders, companies that have excelled in strategy. And luckily we have a staffer here at the district, Matt Schumann, who formerly worked at Nestle and was able to share that company's approach and best practices to strategy. And that was very informative. Now for the sub-team, it was really important to engage in a full faith effort and really own the development of the district strategy. Because we really recognize that strategy couldn't just be a wish list of ideas or like a collection of projects. It really needed to have a strong organizational architecture, and that the strategy had to link the actions in a coherent and casual way in order to drive organizational performance. And this architecture we felt was important in order to provide a distinct, because the district rather provides a distinct value and has to perform in very distinct ways to deliver that value to our owner communities. And quite honestly, our needs and structure as a district are more aligned with a business than sort of your general purpose government agency. And that's because we utilize and maximize our assets to provide services that provide this value to a very discrete set of customers. And if we don't deliver on that value to our customers, they have options to influence us positively or negatively, via you, the commission, and in other ways as well. So, and it's also not an option for them to develop their own wastewater solution and take their business elsewhere. So we really need to keep that focus in mind. So what is the architecture of our strategy? It has 4 parts. The anchor point is our purpose statement. And Michael, if you can switch screens from here to the next slide, that'd be great. Our purpose statement, which succinctly describes what value the district provides and to whom. And so through a series of 4 half-day retreats at the end of February, beginning of March, the executive team developed this purpose statement, which you see here on the screen, and I'll read it. The district's purpose is to address regional wastewater related needs in partnership with the communities it serves, and to do so in a way that is more strategic, effective, and efficient than individual communities could do on their own. So to fulfill this purpose, the district has to excel at certain things. And so this is the second level of the architecture, which are called performance areas. And if you recall the quote by Porter, the essence of strategy is choosing what not to do. We develop the performance areas with that in mind. So the performance areas, and Michael, you can flip the screen here, are limited in number in order to drive priority and allocate resources to manage workload in a way that ensures that the right work is being done at the right time to deliver on our purpose. That is to provide value to our owner communities. And you can see here on the screen, just as we did our performance areas, and these were developed in those same retreats that I mentioned earlier. The executive team worked on them collaboratively, and from an initial list of more than 35, we identified these 7 performance areas. And they are infrastructure reliability, maintaining public trust, innovation and adaptation, regulatory compliance, workforce development, financial sustainability, and management. So, since performance in these areas is by definition necessary to fulfill the district's purpose, it's essential that we have performance indicators to reveal when improvement is needed. Good indicator design is challenging, so we're still developing these. And where performance needs improvement, or where there are opportunities to do even better, it's important to know what the drivers of performance are. Some actions will have a greater impact on performance than others. And knowing these drivers helps a district to focus on what will make a difference. Identifying executive level drivers will be a later stage in our strategy development. But attention to drivers is built into project management, which Bill is going to talk about next. So taken together, these 4 pieces of our strategy infrastructure or architecture allow us to know what efforts will matter. Those are the drivers. just about where effort is required. Those are the indicators to know where excellence matters in the first place, the 7 performance areas that you see here, and all in service of those who benefit from and pay for the district, which is our purpose statement. Really what it comes down to, it is saying no to say yes, establishing priorities and managing resources to manage workload. It's about choosing what not to do in order to be intentional about the work, the projects, and the activities we commit to as a means to set priorities and manage that workload, and so we can deliver excellent value to the communities we serve. So a good strategy is only as good as the execution infrastructure that supports it. So the strategy piece is just one small bit, and execution is really critical, and it's where a lot of organizations fail, and it was a point of failure in our pillars. So with that, we'll take questions after Bill's piece, but with that, I'm going to turn it over to Bill so he can talk about the execution piece, which goes right along with the strategy.
Good morning. I'll give everyone a moment to take a breath. I'm Bill Walker, Senior Director for Strategy. There's an iceberg in the background of this slide, which is symbolizing the relationship between strategy and strategy execution. They're connected, first of all. Strategy, the 10% above the water, is visible to outsiders. Execution, the 90%, is only visible to insiders. It's also more effort than strategy development, and without execution, strategy has no foundation. This slide has 3 questions for us to ponder. 1, effective organizations have an oversight team to prioritize and coordinate work, and configurations vary for those teams, but they have one. Why? 2, oversight teams use standard tools, project charters, master project lists, scoring criteria. Again, specifics vary, but they use them. Why? 3, effective organizations recognize that a person can understand points 1 and 2 and still not understand strategy execution or be able to do it. What is needed to understand it and be able to do it? Let's start with the oversight team. No, go back. Thank you. Often, Lori Dunn, District Technology Manager, alerts me to another group's project, and she warns that it's going to involve IT in ways that have not been considered. And what should we do about it? How about let's talk with them? That's fine, but that does not scale for the same reason that airlines do not have direct flights between all their cities. Next slide, please. To connect 3 cities, you need 3 flights. To connect 4, you need 6. 6, you need 15. Quiz. How many flights do you need to connect 20 cities? I don't expect an answer. Next slide, please. You need 190, or only 20 if you link them to one hub. We have more than 20 things here at the district. Staff cannot do direct flights to prioritize and coordinate with others. That's why effective organizations have an oversight team. Second question, standard tools. Here is something that happened to us recently. There was a project to replace one thing with another thing, and the team was working very well. It came time to pay for the new thing, and they had no budget. How did that happen? The person who started this thought about budget and then left the district, and the team assumed budget was handled. Here's a quote from Atul Gawande. Avoidable failures are common and persistent, not to mention demoralizing and frustrating, across many fields, from medicine to finance, business to government. The volume and complexity of what we know has exceeded our individual ability to deliver its benefits correctly, safely, or reliably. We need a different approach for overcoming failure, one that builds on experience and takes advantage of the knowledge people have, and also makes up for our inevitable human inadequacies. And there is such an approach. It's a checklist, end quote. A project charter is a checklist, the wisdom of successful projects in easy to use form. And guess what? Our new charter template asks about budget. If we had charters when that project started, the project manager and the oversight team would have easily spotted the problem and fixed it. The other standard tools are similarly helpful. Asking staff and the oversight team to figure it all out on their own for each project imposes an impossible burden. That's why effective organizations use standard tools. Third question was understanding. I'm going to take you back to your math classes. The instructor is working a problem on the board and you cannot follow it. Excuse me, I got lost on step 4. The instructor explains it slowly or in a fresh way, and then you can follow. Now you go home to work the same problem and you can't do it. Doing a problem on your own is a different skill than following someone else. But you practice until you can do it, and then you take the exam and you find a few unfamiliar problems. B students get mad here. You never taught us these. A students notice something. They have seen the problem, but in a different form, or they can apply a technique that they learned in a previous problem. Recognizing problems and applying techniques are different skills than working problems you've seen before. C students think that following someone else is enough. B students think that working given problems is enough. A students know that recognizing and applying are needed for success. This same point is found in art and cooking and music and sports and all other forms of human endeavor. You learn by actually doing the work. And effective organizations recognize this point for strategy execution. Just telling people what to do is not enough. You have to get lots of hands-on help and lots of practice in strategy execution. On Tuesday of this week, I was talking about this stuff with the Employee Leadership Council. And Carol Milkey, our lab manager, emphasized an important point. The district used to have far fewer projects, and those projects were more independent of one another. The district could do okay without the things I've just discussed, but that time is long gone. Next slide, please. To repeat, effective organizations have an oversight team to prioritize and coordinate work. We have one. Its next meeting is in April. Effective organizations use standard tools to make project management easier. We have a bunch of them, especially charters. Effective organizations give hands-on help and lots of practice in strategy execution. We're making a real point of doing that now and for the long haul. Amanda opened this with mentioning the commission's key interest, prioritization at the top of the organization, workload management. And by adopting these best practices in strategy and strategy execution, we're doing our best to deliver on those interests. Thank you for listening. I'll turn it back to Michael.
Thank you, Bill and Amanda. And now I'll pause here to see what questions the commission has with the work that Amanda and Bill have just presented. So you don't have any questions, and that's okay.
I've got
Hands
one.
are up, Michael. Hands are
Oh,
up.
I'm sorry, I didn't see them. Sorry. I'm just looking
Yeah,
here.
Beth and Grant have their hands up for sure.
Beth?
Thank you. I just have to say that I think this work is excellent, what you guys have put together. I think you put a lot of thought into it. I think that it's going to make a difference going forward. I'm excited to see the work, as it progresses. I'm 100% behind it. I really, really like it. I think one thing that I'd like to understand going forward is how you make sure that as this oversight committee is really tied into all the departments in the district, and how that they're going to coordinate and work that together. And I really want to understand Michael's role in this oversight committee too. I think I read somewhere in the papers that you said that he has a vote, kind of a tiebreaker vote. And I'm just wondering if that really is his role as a tiebreaker, or is he a leader, advisor? I'm not really understanding what exactly his role is and how that ties into the committee. So.
Thank you, Commissioner Foster.
Thank you. Yeah, maybe I'll just kind of summarize what I'm understanding from what we've seen so far. So I saw kind of two sort of major elements. One of them is I guess a recommendation to kind of abandon the existing strategic plan framework, pillars, et cetera, and replace it with the proposal for the performance areas. And then the second part that I think Bill spoke more to about the oversight team standards, project charters, et cetera. I think the second part is really exciting to me. I think that's something that we've heard pretty clearly kind of as part of the like CED performance process, the sort of need to prioritize, clarify, kind of connect across silos and really understand impacts to all the different components. So that to me is super exciting to sort of see a proposed framework for how we can perhaps better manage that and make some of those hard decisions about what we are doing, what we're not doing. I think the first part, I mean, it kind of sort of went by really quickly. I was sort of, that list. And I guess, I mean, honestly, I feel a little surprised that sort of came from like a sort of staff discussions and put in front of us. And I think to me, that feels like sort of the essence of the commission's work and responsibility. And I think it was a little bit notable to me that, some of the things that we talked about in a round of input around sort of going above and beyond in terms of pollution prevention, thinking outside of our boundaries, kind of global warming, energy use, et cetera, this connection point with the community, those were the things that the commissioners raised as sort of how we get to 10. And like, I didn't quite see them in there. And so I guess I had maybe anticipated that today was going to be more work of the commission, working towards either reviewing or developing a new, what those performance areas are or priorities, et cetera. So I think my big picture, I'm feeling like, I guess I don't see that as staff work. And I'm nervous about sort of just kind of pass pretty quickly. And I certainly would want to take a lot more time individually. And I would hope as a commission to really understand that proposal and to give space for commissioners to really evaluate that and potentially propose something different or modifications to it.
Michael, let me know if you'd like to comment on that now or after the other question.
I think it's really helpful to hear these comments at this point. I just want to continue to receive the comments from the commission. Commissioner Meyer.
Thank you, Michael. I was tracking really well with 3 of the 4 key parts that Amanda outlined and of the architecture of the sort of new approach. I wasn't quite getting where drivers fit in among those 4 and would love a little more help understanding that from Amanda, Bill, Michael, whoever's in a good position to do that. But the other 3 fit and sort of flow and tie together for me, but I'm not sure I'm fully understanding what drivers means in this context. I use the word in a lot of other contexts, and I think it has different meanings there. So I'm just struggling with that one a little bit.
Thank you, Commissioner Eskridge.
Thank you. My questions are somewhat similar to Grant's questions, which is to say, I'm struck with what of this framework is internal staff work and what of this is commission level work, and how do we as a commission stay supportive and directive on the policy and strategic direction without getting into the weeds of the project management work, which, you know, I couldn't agree more, Bill, is absolutely critical and is the bulk of the work. But to me, that is very much staff work. So I'm curious at how, frankly, the socializing of those pieces continues to be managed by staff, and we stay supportive, but don't get in the weeds on it, but have a good understanding of how the strategic pieces fit with our budgeting work and authority and all of the kind of things that are in the policy realm of us as commissioners, without going too much into those weeds of implementation, which are super important, but I think we have to rely on staff to manage.
Thank you. Commissioner Hubble.
Okay. I had basically just written down right before Sarah's comment, pretty much the same thing. My question was, is this a tool to be for this overall strategy to be used at the staff level to assure proper workflow, or is it to be used by the commission to develop and affect policy? Because if it's, I think then if it's the latter, that gets to Grant and what Sarah was also saying is that the commission should have had more involvement earlier on in the development of some of these points. But if it's used mainly a strategic workflow thing within the district, then I see that, probably pretty much a staff level. So I guess it really depends on where we see this work fitting in within the overall district structure.
Thank you. Are there other comments or thoughts? Before I respond. Just scanning this sets us up very well for the next phase of this discussion today around roles and in terms of what is the commission work versus staff work and how that relates to policies. And the strategic purpose was a way for staff to at least get grounded in our internal work. And but that is strictly in the commission's realm and has to be looked at and vetted and refined to meet the policy goals. And that'll get to the next layer of how all these pieces fit together and what we've planned as the work ahead. And so I hope to be able to answer all of those questions in the next phase here. and in the coming study sessions. Because what we're really doing here is trying to make the governance work for the commission and shape it in a manner with the policies you want that put you in charge and have the control you need. And that is really what our process is going to be here in these next few study sessions coming up. I was going to move into breakout to have this discussion, but we had such a wonderful discussion here. I don't think that is at all necessary because you provided really good input. And so what I'd like to do, if possible here, is just have a short meeting break because we've been at this for an hour and a half. I see here we have 10 minutes. Let's 9:25 now. Let's reconvene at 9:30. Maybe not 10 minutes, maybe 5 minutes. 9:30 to take a quick break, and then we'll resume the next phase of this, which is looking at our policies. Looks like we're at 5 minutes, and trying to see if everyone's here. Everyone's back. Give it one more minute. Okay, thank you. Thank you for returning back. And now we're going to move into the policy piece. And I hope that through this presentation, many or if not all of your questions that were just raised will be answered about how all these pieces fit together, because what we are trying to do is present the internal piece. That's my slides here. So question is, and you can just raise your hand, and I'll look through the hand raising. What happened to the district in 2015? I'm looking for hands here. Actually, in 2015, I'm not seeing it.
Michael, Tom and I all have our hands up. I'm just worried you can't see.
I'm so sorry.
And Ezra.
I'm so sorry.
But why don't you go ahead and tell us?
My screen isn't showing the hands very well.
I would like to hear your interpretation of what happened to the district in 2015.
Commissioner, go ahead. Again.
I said, since you were about to tell us, I would be interested in hearing what your interpretation of what happened to the district in 2015.
Okay, I will. There were other hands up. Would others like to share their thoughts?
Michael, if you open the participants thing, it's very good to see who has their hand up.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Oh, there we are. Commissioner Hubble.
Tom, you're muted.
I'm going to say it's when the reorganization of the commission occurred.
Yes. Yes, and Commissioner Meyer.
I don't know that I have anything more to add than what Tom said.
Thank you. And that was the most monumental thing that happened in 2015. There were a few other things, pursuing adaptive management as a compliance strategy, pursue new connection charges methodology and other things, but it was the shift in the makeup of the district that made a change. And the reason why the change happened, there were concerns raised by communities. And these concerns were forming in 2014, 2013, with the new phosphorus rule coming. And conversations were occurring about the district and around the district, but not with the district. And many, if not most, communities passed or considered resolutions supporting the idea of balanced representation. this change in our governance, moving from 5 commissioners to 9, if you imagine standing on, if you're at a dance and you're on the dance floor, going to the balcony and looking down on at the dance floor, it is somewhat inevitable. The district formed in 1930 when there was no territory, and it made sense to manage at a county level as the district built. Expansion was the focus, and technology and federal funding was available to comply with permits. But as our territory started to reach its limits, other challenges gradually started taking precedence, and the commissioners in some of the earlier questions in the study session identified all of them: climate change, aging infrastructure, technology. We're all hitting the limits, and for even stricter environmental compliance, and all of them have serious cost implications. This is what the commission looked like in September of 2015, and this is what the commission looked like a month later in October 2015. The oak table that commissioners are sitting around on the left is the oak table that commissioners have been deliberating over for over 50 years. And the 9-member commission was stuffed into a room. For those of you who remember the first meeting, we didn't even have a meeting space large enough to accommodate a commission meeting. It was clear during this transition period between the existing and incoming commission that operating under the existing model of way of doing business could be a recipe for conflict and dysfunction. A 5-member commission had a shared value set, and they were appointed by the county executive, and that's why that shared value set. But moving to a 9-member commission with potentially different values needed a different approach, and it needed a new way. The commission needed a new way of governing, and the new 9-member commission did so by building the district from the ground up, by establishing and setting and eventually approving in 2017 your own policy book. And that was, as you remember, an arduous process of looking at all the old policies we had, looking at existing policies and trying to figure out which of those policies should remain, and then identify them with new policies. We had to find a way of organizing policies because there are so many, and the commission adopted what I'd call a structure or means to organize policies to be most effective. And this is something locally, there are organizations that use this. It's called called policy governance. Willie Street Co-op uses it. Madison Water Utility, Group Health Cooperative. And I also had the Ann Arbor Authority on there, who I connect with on it. And they are a regional authority, or authority very similar to us. And the two things that really stood out with organizing policies in this manner that the commission embraced, and that is two really big strengths, and that is it focuses on the needs of the ownership. And secondly, it was flexible, because as the new commission was building their policies from the ground up, this system would allow the commission to exert as much control as they felt was necessary where it wants to. And so that is what the commission adopted, and we've been using ever since. Commission also has limited time and to fulfill their oversight role with assuring that policies get done. And the commission invests about 1,000 to 1,500 hours a year, and staff hours are 200,000 or more, that the commission needs to understand that that work is directed towards their policies. And if you add in all the contractors and consultants we use that are under management control of our staff, that can reach easily 500,000 hours of time, of district time, going to fulfill district objectives. One of the challenges we have is we have a lot of policies. District policies, like many organizations, policies are located in different areas. They're in, resolutions. Many times these resolutions are not referred to, or they're forgotten. Memos, they're buried in minutes. They're buried in outdated policies. And the commission, when they first looked at all the policies in 2016 to incorporate all these, was really challenged with this type of organization. And it wasn't clear who was accountable for what. And so the policy book that the commission has outlines policies in 4 containers. And that is, what do we want to accomplish for our ownership, which are the outcome policies, and what are the limitations by which staff can conduct business, or thou shall not do's. All organizations have those with ethics codes and policies. And then there are clear delegation policies for who's accountable for getting the work done. And then the commission's own process policies for how the commission wants to conduct business, how they want to do things like what we're doing today, reviewing your policies, set direction for the organization. But the center is the strategic purpose, which is something that the commission owns and has to define. And the question that was raised earlier about the staff straw man of the strategic purpose ultimately needs to be approved by the commission and put into policy. The policies are organized in four neat containers, but they are also organized and layered. And first, you'll see that there are global policies for each of them. And at some point, like a global policy such as on outcomes is to protect public health and the environment, very similar to what our founding documents are. But that's usually not enough. A global executive policy is prudence and ethics of staff in the CED, and then who that work is delegated to, and then global policies as well. And as the commission develops their policies, they begin to develop layers of specificity in terms of how detailed they want their policies to be, the direction they want to give staff, to the point where the commission is comfortable with the level of detail they've given, and it allows staff to use means to deliver on them and report the results. This happens with intention. One of the real strengths with the policy containers you have here is that there's a lot of accountability in terms of how achievement of commission policies are achieved. Like I said, most other organizations have all of these policies, but that accountability piece many times is missing from the reporting of these achievements. And the more layers that the commission establishes, the more control they're taking. And there are areas of the district where the commission absolutely wants to have more control, and the policies are more detailed. And your policy book reflects those areas. And I'm going to transition to 2 of the pie pieces, starting with the limitations policy, and then moving to the outcomes, just to give you a sense for what's in your policy book. So the strategic purpose, which you'll be looking at and evaluating in May with your other policies, then grounds things in the executive limitations. And the executive limitations at a high level is ethics and prudence. You know, ethics is standards are absolute, they're not situational, and are not allowed even if the ends are achieved. And prudence defines unacceptable risks, and this can vary from organization to organization. Areas of highest risk usually have the most commission control, and areas where the commission, these are the areas of next layer of policy that the commission has established and then has exerted more control, mostly in the area of treatment of staff, financial planning, and financial condition. And if you look at these elements in your policy, you know, we have an engagement policy, we have an employee handbook that has 130 pages of policy embedded in it that the commission approves regarding treatment of staff, and safety policies are in that manual. Financial planning and budgeting, the commission has established very strict ways to manage our financing and budgeting, and the financial condition is transaction approval authority for the district. And so these are your policies. And then we take those policies as staff and we identify how we're going to not only deliver on them, but improve upon them, which are the strategic performance areas. I identify administrative guidelines, manuals, SOPs, and tasks. And my role in this process is to make sure that those strategic performance areas, in working with the team, are delivering on commission policies, and that I develop administrative guidelines that assure that how we're organized internally is moving us towards our policies. Similarly, with our outcomes, the commission has established 3 overarching outcomes, and they are wastewater, clean and effective wastewater management, recovering valuable resources, and financial sustainability. And there are more detailed policies with our sewer use ordinance of what we require our owner communities to do. And of course, there is a permit that we have to comply with. And again, the strategic performance areas, the CIP and budget are developed internally by staff. And then those things, the CIP and budget, are reviewed by the commission and then adopted and approved later in the year. And strategic performance areas are things that we will be reporting to the commission. And this process, since the strategic performance areas are new and are trying to hit that next layer in the strategic plan, what we intend to do is, when we have our discussion on policies at our May study session, it is to ask the commission how much control they want to have over those. Because right now we are developing them at the staff level of what we believe strategic performance needs to be based on the work of the executive team. And we need to check in with you in May on whether those are things that the commission wants to have more oversight over in terms of defining them, or maybe just in how they're monitored to you, which gets to the 3rd study session, which is monitoring. And how do we know those strategic performance areas are actually being delivered in a manner that we're comfortable with as a commission? So that's how things are aligned. And so now what I'd like to do is I'd like to, with that brief overview, is have the commission do a group round, and I'd like you to take a couple of minutes after what you've heard about this presentation about just your overall structure, and think about your interests here, about what you hope for, and what you need, what worries you, and what you're concerned about here. And if you'd take a minute or two to just a couple minutes to jot on your notepad what these things are, then we're going to go around the table, and starting with Commissioner Clark, and get your feedback. So let's take about 3 minutes. Okay. Before we go around the table, I want to address Commissioner Eskridge's question about why the strategic performance areas are so far down the levels as opposed to outcomes in the buckets of wastewater, resource recovery, and financial sustainability. I think that is where we are with the commission, is trying to understand exactly where it fits. The district performance areas, as we were doing our research, indicated that at the staff level, we have to really identify first what we need to be really good at in the delivery of our staff every day to be effective, and that we need to report to you how effective we are, and it has to support your policies regarding what the owner's needs are. And so that is the question that we'll be asking you, is how much control you want to have over this right now. Right now, we've identified it as something as the executive team. We have identified these needs of management, workforce development, and other things that are very critical for delivery on these outcomes. So let's go around, starting with Commissioner Clark, and get a sense for what your interests are, your hopes, needs, worries, and concerns regarding this very brief overview of the policies of the district.
I hope, so I'll go right down the question list here, is I hope we find some clarity as a group on this. I don't think that's going to be an issue, but that we also represent the needs of the member communities in this process. What do we need? What do I need? Maybe a little more clear direction on the process based on the meeting today. This is not really a worry, but I'll answer the worry question. That the commission meets the priorities of the commission and the district, and then concerned about, I think needs to be some clarity on where the district ends and the commission begins in this process, based on some of the feedback I've heard in my own thought on this topic.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Bookland.
I kind of hope that we can have better communication within not only the district and the owners, but also with the executive team to work closely with the commission going forward. And I think that's important to understand, where the commission roles and responsibilities are and where the executive team roles and responsibilities are. And I think if we continue to work really closely together, maybe some of that will sort itself out. But I think we need to really be connected to that executive team. So that's kind of what I hope for and kind of what I feel is needed. And what concerns and worries me is that I don't want to get too far into the weeds. I want to make sure that we stay at an appropriate level and not get too involved in the details. But yet we need to be aware of, to use the forest for the trees metaphor, we need to be aware of the trees so that we can manage the forest overall. So it's a fine line between, understanding what, the basis, and then being able to manage the bigger needs.
Commissioner Foster.
I think so, like maybe a generalized worry or concern for me is the viability and appropriateness of the kind of adopted policy governance framework. I mean, this is something that I kind of came into on the commission, didn't get, great training or background on it, heard it talked about in different ways. Haven't really felt like it's been actually how we've been doing our business since I've been on the commission. And this last summer, several commissioners, I think it was Tom, Ezra, Sarah, and myself, had an opportunity to get some additional training around it. Michael, you and staff, had training around it. And, while it was interesting, I remember sort of, our discussion at the end, and my recollections of that was like me feeling like, kind of feels like it's a little bit of a square peg round hole, and I'm not really confident this is gonna be the best framework for us. And I worry that we'll spend a whole bunch of time trying to get it implemented precisely, and it's always going to be a bit at odds with the reality that we are a public body and we're not really a business. And I thought I heard similar takeaways from, at least from the other commissioners, and what's presented today kind of feels like a sort of a doubling down on that. So I guess I have some like generalized concerns around that, and whether this, sort of going deeper into it is really going to get us what we're trying to get out of it. I think of some specific examples that I've been struggling a little bit with, and how those get resolved in a policy governance framework, and it sort of compounds some of those questions or worries. I think one of at the most recent customer community meeting, I was really shocked, to be honest, that there was a sort of plan and an ask for volunteers basically, I guess, employees of different municipalities of our owner base to participate in a rate setting work group that I had never even heard about as a commissioner, the commission never really weighed in on if that's sort of our approach. And it just really struck me as like that, to me, that feels like the heart of one of the duties of the commission is to really, and that is a policy, like how we pay for things and how that is allocated across our owner communities just seems like so obviously fundamental commission work to me. And, I just so I had all kinds of questions. It hasn't been on a commission agenda for us to discuss, but I feel really uncomfortable having another group of sort of non-elected, non-appointed folks coming up with a proposal in collaboration with district employees that then sure the commission, assumedly would have to sign off at the end. But I just feel like there's this real risk of the commission not actually doing its job. And what I think of as the commission's job, maybe others have different ideas about that, but it's pretty just fundamentally based in state statute and in our actual legal authority and responsibility. And I really worry about this policy governance model not actually supporting us to do that work. I think what Commissioner Bookland mentioned about forest and trees and appropriate level of detail, it's another thing I've really struggled with. I feel like we continue to get often hyper detailed presentations on things that are often very interesting and can also help just create a broader knowledge base for us. But that often seems to be the bulk of our time. And I don't feel like we are really spending our focused time providing the strategic direction that I feel like we should be doing. I feel there's this tension between think, Michael, you described it as control. Like, what level of control does the commission want? Which is just, every time I hear it, it kind of like, I get a little reaction to it, but it's like, I mean, it's control versus like direction. And, you know, I in our previous breakout, when we were talking about what it would take to get to 10 and some of the things that I mentioned, you know, one of the other folks in that group, you know, with City of Madison said, yeah, you know, it's interesting. The previous administration, you know, might have had a priorities in one direction that's not necessarily the same as the current Madison administration. And so as a commissioner that's appointed by the new administration, who's elected by the people of Madison, like, you know, it's not perfect, but it's sort of the closest democratic thing we have to representing the values and the goals and the priorities of the people that the district is serving. And if I as a commissioner and we as a commission aren't actively reviewing and reasserting those priorities, I think there's a real risk that we become out of touch. And, you know, I think some of that one slide that you showed, Michael, of like what happened in 2015 and what was heard at that time, I mean, there was clearly a strong emphasis around sort of fiscal responsibility. And there's still, I think, a lot of interest around that. But being a commissioner appointed by City of Madison, by the mayor of Madison, and also being an elected official, like, I feel really confident that what I've been bringing up around energy efficiency, global warming, pollution prevention, that's what I'm feeling are really key priorities that I'm not confident have really come into. I mean, we haven't had the kind of discussion. Say, okay, how does that, where is that tension between that and costs? And I feel like some sort of things from the past continue to carry a lot of momentum and weight. That to me is the role of the commission, is to continuously check in on that. And maybe we do need to put some more emphasis on some of these other areas. And I don't see how that happens at a staff level. And so I've talked more than I need to, but I guess it opens up a lot of questions and concerns with me. I guess I fundamentally feel like we as a commission are not driving, and I think we need to be driving.
Thank you, Commissioner Foster. Commissioner Hovell?
Yeah, thank you, Michael. I'll try to keep it brief. What do you hope for? Find my notes here. That there's lines of direction and authority between the varied levels within the organization are clearly outlaid by the policies and limitations. What you need, I think that requires good and open levels of communication between all levels. What worries you? What I'm maybe most concerned about is how these policies may become overly burdensome in the long run, that you can get too many policies or they start to contradict each other. And then they become overly burdensome, or they become overly controlling and stifle innovation and good thinking. And then what are you concerned about? I think that that each level of the organization properly lives up to its aspects, its requirements under, or directions under the policies and the limitations, so that the commission is truly the policy maker. The staff, helps advise and so forth on that, and then folds through. I think how they all meld together, the varied policies, that's kind of what worries me, and how this all functions to keep the organization working properly.
Commissioner Meyer?
Couple things that occurred to me here. I was thinking back to the pillars plan, and I definitely have a hope that we can get more specific in the new framework around what success looks like around the specific outcomes that we'll end up identifying as priorities. I think that was one of the shortcomings of the old plan. We just never went to that layer of what does success look like around a given outcome. And that level of depth of detail, I think is really important. It's probably, I'm not sure I'm well studied enough yet in the new four-part architecture to know where it fits in there, but I sort of have a hopeful confidence that it does. And I think Bill and Amanda will tell us where it does. Secondly, I think Sarah spoke to something that was going on, kicking around in my head, and I want to keep it engaging. To my mind, maybe there's two layers where something like strategic performance areas can happen. I think I understand why that's sort of it out several layers out from the middle in Michael's conception of it. But I think maybe something Sarah was getting at that I resonate with is that there's a need for the commission to do that way closer into the center. We need to identify those sort of key outcomes, and we need to probably rank and prioritize them too. And to my mind, that strategic performance area concept maybe fits, but it's a nested hierarchy of those. So there's the center sort of commission level version of it, and another staff level version that's out into the weeds more, into the detail more. In my mind, we'll have to talk more about that, understand how all that sort of comes together. But I just wonder if there might be a bit of a nested way in which that happens. So that's a hope too, or something I'm hoping we can get out of the process as we move through it.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Wilson?
Thank you. All right, so what do you hope for? Well, I hope that we focus on revisions to that plan that we spent a lot of time on, that we learned over time that maybe need revision or refining, and not that we're completely rewriting it. That may mean pulling some things and putting them in the right spot, but I guess that's where I'm hoping we're going here in the long run. What do I need? I don't know what I need here. We're having so many conversations that are going so in depth, and strategic planning and policies. It's a great conversation. It's great to hear different people's opinions. I'm just not sure at this point what I need. I'm kind of letting this play out a little bit. But I do have a couple of worries and concerns that kind of lay into it. I worry that we are starting over with this, and it seems like it's being driven by staff work and not the commission level. And I'm a little worried about that. And I think that seems to be a theme that's going on, but and that may be because we're doing this work and our facilitators are internal and not external, like we did the first time. And I don't know that I was a fan of that either. So whatever. And what am I concerned about? I'm concerned that we'll become more passive than active in our voices. And I I know we've talked about, and people know a lot more about strategic planning here certainly than I do. But the last time we spent a lot of time on that strategic plan about we need to use our active voices. We need to be active and not passive in what we're doing. And it's not what we're not going to do, it's what we are going to do. And I just think that's concerning me here right now, that we're looking at it from a different perspective, and maybe that's what we need to do. It's one of those things that I don't know what I need. Maybe that's what we need. So there you go. There's confusion from Westport for you.
Thank you, Commissioner Wilson.
As the person who gets to go last, I get to echo that a lot of the things that I would have wanted to say have been said. So I'll try to move fairly quickly, which is to say, I too am hoping for clarity, but in clarity between understanding how all of these different levers of governance and policymaking and authorities fit together to have a functioning commission and a functioning and continually highly performing staff team, and understanding and respecting those different roles and responsibilities without abdicating the responsibility of governance that is required for us as a commission. So I think what I'm needing on that is I'm having trouble understanding, and I kind of gets to some of my questions, how staff is interpreting how this process will help in staff work, and clarity will be provided to them through this sort of a policy governance framework and process. I don't think that is translating well for me right now. And with that, maybe it's because I'm not interpreting or understanding how staff and management and leadership is defining some of these words and themes. And that concerns me a lot, because I'm a person who loves strategic planning. It is familiar to me. I like doing it. I generally am a person who sees value in it. And I'm finding myself worried that this process is not the right process, and we are not doing the right thing in the way in which we are reviewing it right now. And so that feels very disconcerting and worrisome for me, because I want to make sure that as a commission, we are doing the most productive and helpful policy work that we can possibly do in our role in governance. And right now, I'm feeling like this is kind of a futile exercise that I'm concerned is not going to put us in a better position than we're in right now. And I'm, just like I said last time, I'm open to being convinced otherwise. And I'm actually predisposed to be convinced otherwise. So that's why I'm a little bit extra concerned that I'm not feeling very clear. And I'm frankly feeling a little bit like I'm a person who, in other strategic plannings, I can see the rooms that I've facilitated around strategic plans where there's the skepticism from the person who just hates strategic planning in the room. And I'm feeling like that person right now. And I shouldn't, in my understanding of myself, feel like that person, because that is not usually my role in these sorts of discussions. But that is where I'm at right now.
Thank you, Commissioner Eskridge. Are there what other points or comments would commissioners like to make? Commissioner Foster.
Thank you. I guess thinking about how we work to address some of the things that have been shared and kind of work towards where do we go from here. I mean, one thing that just really stands out for me is the commission has to take a more role. I think, I get, we have no one to blame but ourselves for kind of sitting back and waiting. And I mean, just really appreciate clearly tremendous amount of staff work and energy put into it. I think we need to figure out, how does the commission or a subset of the commission, maybe it's the executive team, maybe it's a subgroup, I don't know the right form, but I think we're going to continue to struggle to the degree that you all heard the feedback you heard now. Go back and as a staff team or executive team or sub team or whatever it is, spend another month and a lot of effort and come back and say, okay, here's what we heard, here's some, modifications. I think this work needs to be more actively, like the plan itself and our approach has to be more, the commission has to engage more in that work in order to get something that we're all feeling comfortable with.
I'm looking to see if there are other hands up.
I'll just chime in because I didn't actually raise my hand, but I think one of the other things that's maybe part of the challenge right now is I would describe it as like, I'm not sure that the juice is worth the squeeze, and perhaps because that's because I'm not understanding what the problem is that we're trying to solve for. And that would be very helpful to understand from staff. And then we need to get into alignment, Matt, to kind of echo Grant's point, as a commission. What is it that we're trying to do and solve for? Because that feels amorphous right now.
If I agree with Sarah on that point. I think I'm more confused now at the end of, as we're approaching the end of this, than I was at the beginning. And maybe it's because I'm not sure where I see all these pieces fitting or what the deal is, but I think she hit it on the head when she said, what is the problem that we're trying to solve? And is it truly a problem that needs to be solved, or we're just going through this? You know?
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Foster.
Thanks. Two other quick thoughts. One is we use the words policy and implementation a lot. We have used those. I think Sarah mentioned need for some definition in some other ways. Those two things I think really feel potentially problematic, and like, where is that line, and understanding the nuance of that. And I think the way I understand that and the way maybe policy governance understands that are still not, they're not in alignment. So that is, I think, is some really important discussion and definition work. Also, you know, perhaps because of my role as a legislator, as an elected official, I do continue to sort of force myself to go back to our statutory authority. And, you know, that perhaps, you know, that might have been helpful for me as sort of a grounding place for some of this discussion. And I continue to feel like that's a bit at odds with policy governance as well. And so this idea that we can effectively carry out our duties and responsibilities through sort of policy alone just doesn't match with the actual like language in the statutes, and that we are the ones that are supposed to be creating, adopting plans, the operations, all of it. Like, it's all on the commission's shoulders per the statute. And so I think you know, in a future conversation, I think we should all reflect on that, because we do have legal responsibility. That's pretty explicitly laid out in statute.
In a sense, Grant, that's probably one of the differences between business and a governmental unit. That, you know, the governmental unit, as a governmental unit, we have a larger responsibility to the statutes and the Constitution than we necessarily even do to our customers, because we have to follow that first.
Thank you, Commissioner Hubble. What other thoughts commissioners have? Not hearing or seeing any. This has been extremely productive for me. I think it's a healthy part of our process. You know, we started with something, you did, and the commission has been working on it, and it's your policies and how you want to govern that is really up to you, and it's up to me to help you be successful in that, and us working staff in supporting it and working with you as a team. And the ideas and thoughts you shared today are something that I want to regroup with my team on and really decide how we want to I think we need to take a step back and look at our process for the next study sessions based on this input, and come back to the commission with a thoughtful process that addresses these interests that you've established. Because the process that we have been marching along on is that the policies you've established in the policy book are to be fulfilled, and that is what our work has been doing. And if we want to change that is fine, and we have to just really pause on it and rethink the approach we're going to do. So that'll likely happen before the next study session, and I'll be checking in with my team and seeing really reflecting on this good feedback today, and how do we support your needs in leading the district forward. And so that's why we had a study session today. And that's why we're doing this work together. Are there other thoughts?
Grant has his hand up, Michael.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Commissioner Foster.
Thank you. Yeah, just one other thought as we go through that work, and really appreciate you hearing it, willingness to back and rethink things. I don't know what, I can't remember the specific timeline. I think there were 2 other study sessions planned. I guess I would just offer up that I think there's probably nothing more important than this conversation for us and how we get to all feeling good with it. And so I mean, we do have limited time as commissioners, and we can only act when we're all together. And I think it's, best for direction to come at a commission level when we're all here and able to participate. So I would just offer up, perhaps we should consider having more than 2 conversations on this for the rest of the year. And, maybe we can work to carve out more space at our regular sort of non-study session meetings to continue to do parts of this work, to make progress on it. And perhaps there's some of the more kind of detailed operational report outs, et cetera, that we could swap out to, I think, continue having even small parts of this, I think, really important conversation. So I just put that out for consideration.
I think I saw a few heads nodding. So Michael, maybe it's worth taking a look at the agendas as they're coming up, and then maybe between now and even the end of May, there's some other something else that we can fit in. And then, or throughout the summer, when we have low agenda responsibilities, or we try to make room. We've done that in the past. And I guess that gets to raises in my mind is the question of trying to do these in person. We did this, and this one worked fairly well, I think, via Zoom, but I don't know, once we get into more detailed discussion, maybe best in person. But I'm not sure how everybody else thinks about that.
Do others have thoughts on that question?
I'm kind of ambivalent between, whether it's in person or Zoom on that question. On the other question of doing more meetings on this as a whole commission this year, I'm a big fan.
Yeah, this is the most important work for the commission, of establishing how you want to govern and setting priorities. And it's having our agendas, the commission agendas focused on operational issues is not the goal. So we will utilize your commission time effectively to do this. And it's welcome. I think the study sessions were just identified as a way to have we've had a 2.5 hour discussion today. And but between study sessions, we can have other study sessions, and we will utilize that time effectively to do so. And I appreciate that. This has been a really helpful, very helpful.
Michael, if I could chime in, I'm always slow. I'm a muller. I digest this stuff like a cow digests its grass, maybe. But so to my mind, I'm thinking about what problem we're trying to solve. I'm thinking about the value and the really good work that staff clearly did in thinking about doing strategic thinking. I won't use the P word, in a better way. I think we're trying to harmonize within a really minor range of possibilities some of what's good about policy governance, but not going too far. We're not ready for Carver's model, whole scale, full gulp. We're just not. We never have been. But we have a bunch of stuff on the books. It's called our policy book, and we kind of use that framework because we haven't come up with a better one. And so we're trying to do strategic thinking within that framework as best we can, tailor it to what we want to do. And I said this at the subcommittee meeting with Michael last week when this topic came up a little bit. I'm hanging on to a shred of hope that Michael's very optimistic, I think, or that's how I see him. I'm holding on to a shred of hope that we can thread that needle. I'm right on the edge, but I haven't given up yet. And I kind of hear the group maybe in that same place as I am. But so anyway, this is me trying to process all these parts and trying to rescue what's really good and the good work that's been done by everybody, commission and staff alike, to get us to where we are. And then to sort of glimpse, are we on a path that can get us somewhere good? I'm still hopeful we can. I think we need to do more meetings than the 3 we had envisioned in study sessions in order to try to get through it. But I'm thankful for all the good work everybody's done around the entire table. And that's where I'm at. That's what I've got. Thanks to everybody, though.
Thank you, Commissioner. What other thoughts do you have before we adjourn for the day? I'm not hearing any. As we want, one of the things we will have to do in addition to figuring this out is we still have to prepare for a 2023 budget, and there'll be elements that we want to make sure we connect with the commission on early. And according to your policies now, we want to have that done by the end of the second quarter. And so we want to use part of our time in May is identifying what those are and what you want your policy agenda to be and what do you want us to focus on to continue to develop the commission's governance to a 9-member commission and be effective. So with that, it'll be part of a discussion we have in May or maybe sooner.
Michael, I think Grant had brought this issue up at the last meeting, was that connection between the reviews and the policy governance and what our major policy issues are have come through in the budget. So I think that we would be wise to try to get another one of these meetings in before our regularly scheduled May meeting at the end of May. If you can see if you can make, you have the staff time to be able to do it, and see if we have room in the calendar for it.
We will have room in the calendar. We'll make room in the calendar for it.
Okay. And then if you could let us know what day that you're scheduling that, so we can make sure we keep our schedules free for the morning.
Okay.
Michael,
Commissioner Foster, did you have one more comment?
I did, yeah, just real quickly. I think Tom had mentioned you're sort of a worry about sort of abandoning our kind of previous framework rather than maybe tweaking it. Maybe that could be included as part of the sort of next discussion, especially preparation for budget priorities. Maybe kind of some sort of evaluation or crosswalk we kind of saw very briefly today, versus what are those pillars that we're sort of recommending getting away from. I think for some of us, it might be difficult to just sort of leave that in the dust without reviewing it. So maybe that could be incorporated into that next discussion.
Okay. There is a, I know I gave you a lot of material in the packet, but there is an appendix in the report that is in attachment 1 that explains and evaluates, at least at a staff level, we evaluated why the pillars don't work anymore. So that is, we have a report on that, and we can re-summarize that and discuss it. Okay.
I think Commissioner Foster's focus is on the substance, not the framework. Am I right, Grant? Yeah. Oh, it's like, yep, that's the framework. But what pieces were priorities there that are important enough that they probably belong on the starting potential list for priority consideration going forward?
Okay.
Hope that helps. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. I'm not seeing any other hands raised, and I'm not hearing any other comments. Is there other business? I'm going to turn it back over to, there isn't any other business. I'm going to turn it over to President Hubble for any last thoughts and adjournment.
Well, thank you everybody for for all the hard work by staff, and then all the very good discussion that the commission had. And it certainly gives us a lot of things, ideas to think about, and how everything gets structured over the long term. So let's see, any other business or future agenda topics? I don't see none. So do we have a motion to adjourn?
Wilson, I'll move. We adjourn.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Wilson, second by
Clark, I'll second that, Tom.
Commissioner Clark. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I
And opposed? None? Okay, motion carries. Thank you, everybody. So Michael, you'll let us know what the next couple meetings hold before we, because May is only 2 months away, so.
Right. Thank you. Thank you very
Thank
much,
you.
Commissioners. Have a good day.
Yep, you too.
Take care.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.